I was dressed in simple clothes when the host at Le Ciel refused me a table. We're fully booked, he said with a smirk. Little did he know, I'd just sold my tech company for millions. 3 months later, I owned the restaurant, and his job was the first thing to change. Stay with me to discover how a moment of humiliation turned into the sweetest revenge and an unexpected romance that changed everything. Like and subscribe if you've ever been underestimated. After 12 hours of back-to-back meetings, all I wanted was a quiet dinner. My startup had consumed every waking moment for the past 3 years, and today we'd finally closed our biggest deal yet. I deserved to celebrate, even if it was just me, myself, and a good glass of wine. Le Ciel had been on my bucket list for months. Everyone in tech circles raved about their truffle risotto, and tonight felt like the perfect occasion. I didn't bother changing out of my simple jeans and sweater. My mind was on food, not fashion. As I pushed through the heavy oak doors, Le Ciel unveiled itself like a scene from a movie I didn't belong in. Crystal chandeliers cast a golden glow over cream tablecloths and polished silverware. The soft murmur of conversation mixed with the gentle notes of a live pianist. The air was perfumed with butter, herbs, and money. Lots of it. I approached the host stand, still scrolling through congratulatory texts from my team. The man behind the podium, tall with slicked back hair and a perfectly tailored suit, looked up and immediately his smile tightened. "Good evening. Do you have a reservation?" His eyes scanned my outfit, lingering disapprovingly on my worn sneakers. "No, but I was hoping you might have a table for one." I slipped my phone into my pocket, suddenly aware of how out of place I looked. "I'm afraid that's impossible. We're fully booked tonight." He barely glanced at his reservation book. "Maybe at the bar?" I persisted. "I don't mind waiting." The host, Thomas, according to his name tag, sighed dramatically. "The bar is reserved for dining guests, perhaps somewhere more. Casual would better suit your needs tonight." A couple in evening wear breezed past me. "Our table for two, please," the man announced. "Of course, Mr. and Mrs. Bennett. Right this way." Thomas grabbed menus, shooting me a pointed look. The diner 3 blocks down might have availability. My cheeks burned as I turned to leave, catching whispers and glances from nearby patrons. Outside, the cool evening air hit my face along with the humiliation. I paused, watching through the window as Thomas seated the well-dressed couple at a half-empty restaurant. That's when something hardened inside me. I'd built a company from nothing, changed an entire industry. Yet here I was, being judged by my sneakers. I pulled out my phone again, this time opening my banking app to check my recent deposit. Then I made a call to my financial advisor. "Hey, Lisa, remember that investment opportunity we discussed? I've made up my mind. I want to buy a restaurant." Most people don't know my story. 10 years ago, I was coding in my tiny apartment, surviving on ramen and determination. I'd developed an algorithm that could predict consumer behavior patterns with uncanny accuracy. Everyone said it wouldn't work, everyone except me. When I founded DataPulse, I had 3 employees and a mountain of student debt. Fast forward to last month, our team had grown to over 200 people, and we'd just been acquired by one of the biggest tech giants in the world. The final number on that contract? $340 million. The day after my Le Ciel rejection, I sat in my modest 2-bedroom apartment, staring at my bank account. Despite having more money than I could spend in several lifetimes, I still drove my 10-year-old Honda and shopped at discount stores. Old habits die hard when you've been poor for most of your life. You need to start enjoying your success, my friend Rachel had insisted just last week. Buy something ridiculous. What's the point of all that money if you live like you're still broke? I scrolled through my news feed that morning when a headline caught my eye. Le Ciel restaurant chain facing financial trouble, looking for investors. The article detailed how the renowned restaurant group was struggling after the pandemic and seeking capital to stay afloat. Something clicked inside me, not just revenge, though I can't deny that was part of it, but opportunity. I'd always had a passion for food, and the restaurant industry had been decimated over the past few years. Maybe this was my chance to make a difference while also teaching someone a lesson about judging books by their covers. I called my financial advisor again. Lisa, find out everything you can about Luciel's financial situation. I'm interested in more than just investing. I want controlling interest. Within weeks, I was sitting across from the restaurant group's CFO, dressed in an outfit that cost more than my monthly rent used to be. His eyes widened as I made my offer, significantly above market value, but with one condition: complete management control of their flagship location. May I ask why this particular location? He questioned. I smiled. Let's just say I have a vision for it. As I signed the final paperwork, I thought about Thomas and his dismissive smirk. He had no idea that the woman in sneakers he'd turned away was about to become his boss. I kept the acquisition quiet for a month, allowing the previous management to inform the staff that ownership had changed hands. No names, no details. I wanted the reveal to be perfect. On a crisp Monday morning, I walked into Le Ciel wearing a tailored navy suit. Professional, powerful, but still me. The restaurant was closed to the public, chairs upturned on tables as staff prepared for the day. Everyone gathered in the main dining area, curious eyes watching as I entered. The general manager, Elena, stepped forward. Everyone, I'd like to introduce you to Sarah Bennett, our new owner. I scanned the room, taking in the mixture of uncertainty and hope on their faces. Then I saw him, Thomas, standing near the back, his expression shifting from polite interest to horrified recognition. Our eyes locked, and I gave him a small smile. Thank you all for coming, I began. I know change can be unsettling, but I'm excited about the future of Le Ciel. This establishment has a reputation for excellence that I intend to maintain, while also making some necessary changes. As I outlined my vision for the restaurant, I could see Thomas growing increasingly uncomfortable, shifting his weight from foot to foot. I didn't single him out or let on that we'd met. That wasn't my style. After the meeting, staff members approached me one by one, introducing themselves. Thomas hung back, clearly hoping to avoid me. Just as he turned to leave, I called out, Thomas, could I speak with you for a moment? He approached like a man walking to his execution. Ms. Bennett, I didn't realize that I owned the place or that I was worth acknowledging. The words came out calmer than I expected. I want to apologize for my behavior. If I had known, I cut him off. That's the problem, isn't it? You shouldn't need to know someone's bank balance to treat them with respect. He paled, nodding silently. I'm making changes here, Thomas. Not just to the menu or the decor, but to the culture. Everyone who walks through that door deserves the same level of service, regardless of what they're wearing or who you think they are. Are you firing me? He asked, his voice barely audible. I considered him for a moment. That would be too easy for both of us. Instead, I'm reassigning you. Starting tomorrow, you'll be working with our community outreach program, serving meals at the local shelter once a week. The rest of the time, you'll be learning every position in this restaurant, from dishwasher to server. In 6 months, if you've truly learned something, we'll reevaluate your position. The shock on his face was priceless, but what surprised me was the relief that followed. Thank you for the second chance. I wasn't sure if he deserved it, but I knew that becoming the thing I hated wouldn't fix anything. Don't thank me yet. The real work hasn't even begun. Transforming Le Ciel wasn't just about proving a point, it was about creating the restaurant I'd always wanted to visit. Exclusive, yes, but exclusive because of exceptional food and service, not because of some unspoken dress code or how much jewelry you wore. The tablecloths need to go, I announced during my first meeting with the staff. They're beautiful, but they create a barrier. I want wooden tables, quality craftsmanship that people can touch and feel. Elena, ever diplomatic, raised concerns about maintaining the restaurant's five-star status. Our clientele expects a certain level of formality, and they'll still get excellence, I assured her, just without the pretension. That's when he spoke up from the back of the room. You're going to lose everything that makes Le Ciel special. All eyes turned to a tall man with dark curly hair and intense eyes. He wore chef whites, arms crossed over his chest. And you are? I asked. Daniel Reyes, head chef. His tone made it clear he wasn't impressed with me or my ideas. Our first confrontation was legendary. Daniel had trained under world-renowned chefs, had 2 Michelin stars to his name, and didn't appreciate a tech person telling him how to run his kitchen. I argued that exclusivity was killing the restaurant. He insisted that compromising on tradition would destroy its soul. Your food is incredible, I finally admitted after tasting his signature dishes. But what's the point if only the elite get to experience it? Something shifted in his expression. What exactly are you proposing? Over the next weeks, Daniel and I reached a compromise. The menu would maintain its sophisticated techniques and premium ingredients, but we'd add a prix-fixe option at a more accessible price point. We'd keep the white tablecloths for dinner service, but introduce a more casual lunch concept. The physical transformation was just as significant. We replaced heavy drapes with modern fixtures that let in natural light. The intimidating wine list became an interactive experience, with flights available at different price points. Most importantly, we retrained the staff. Everyone gets treated like a VIP, became our mantra. The college student saving up for a special occasion deserves the same experience as the regular who drops thousands every month. Daniel fought me on almost every change. The lighting will ruin the ambiance. That table arrangement destroys the flow of service. That menu item is beneath us. Yet for every criticism, he offered an alternative. When I suggested simplifying a dish to lower costs, he found a way to maintain the flavor profile using different techniques. His passion for perfection was infuriating and inspiring in equal measure. One night, after a particularly heated debate about the new dessert menu, he finally asked the question I'd been waiting for. Why does this matter so much to you? Because food shouldn't be about status, I said simply. It should be about connection. For the first time, Daniel looked at me, really looked at me, and nodded. Maybe we're not so different after all. The renovation was in full swing, contractors coming and going during closed hours. I started spending evenings at the restaurant, reviewing plans and testing menu items with Daniel long after everyone else had gone home. Try this, he said one night, sliding a plate across the kitchen island. It was a deconstructed version of the restaurant's famous chocolate dessert, reimagined to be less intimidating but no less delicious. I took a bite and couldn't help the small moan that escaped. Okay, you win this round. He smiled, a rare, genuine smile that transformed his usually serious face. I told you we could make it more approachable without sacrificing quality. Something was changing between us. The heated arguments had evolved into passionate discussions. We'd stay for hours debating the merits of different suppliers or the psychology of menu design. I found myself looking forward to these sessions, dressing with a little more care, letting my hair down instead of pulling it into my usual practical bun. One evening, we were standing side by side at the stove, tasting a sauce he was perfecting. Our hands brushed as we both reached for the spoon. The contact was brief, but the jolt of electricity was unmistakable. Our eyes met, and for a moment neither of us breathed. Sorry, he murmured, stepping back slightly. But he didn't look sorry at all. The next day, I arrived to find a small dish waiting on my desk. Not on the menu, not part of our testing. Just for me. What's this? I asked when I found him in the kitchen. Just something I was experimenting with. You mentioned you missed your grandmother's apple pie, so. He shrugged, attempting nonchalance, but watching intently as I tasted it. It was a sophisticated take on apple pie. Caramelized apples, buttery pastry, a hint of rosemary that shouldn't have worked, but somehow did. It tasted like home, but better. This is. I struggled to find words. Too much? He asked, suddenly uncertain. Perfect, I finished. It's perfect. After that, personal creations became his way of communicating. A delicate soup when I mentioned feeling under the weather. A spicy dish inspired by my favorite travel story. Each one telling me something words couldn't. 2 weeks later, I was working late in my office when he knocked on the door. Everyone's gone, he said. I thought maybe you'd like to have dinner. I've been working on the new spring menu. He'd set a table in the middle of the kitchen, not the dining room with its perfect ambiance, but his domain where the magic happened. One place setting across from another, a single candle between them. Is this a date, Chef Reyes? I asked, trying to sound casual despite my racing heart. He looked nervous for the first time since I'd met him. Only if you want it to be. That night, we talked about everything except the restaurant. His childhood in Spain, my years struggling to break into tech, our shared love of old movies and hiking trails. He served 7 perfect courses, each more thoughtful than the last. When he walked me to my car, the night air was cool, but I barely felt it. We stood there awkwardly like teenagers after a first date. Thank you, I said softly, not just for dinner, for believing in what we're creating here. He reached out slowly, giving me time to pull away, and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. I believe in you, he whispered, and then he kissed me, tasting of the chocolate we'd shared for dessert and possibilities I hadn't dared imagine. Dating while renovating a restaurant turns out to be both complicated and wonderful. Daniel and I tried to keep things professional during working hours, but the stolen glances and secret smiles didn't go unnoticed by the staff. Elena caught us holding hands in the wine cellar and just raised an eyebrow, smirking as she walked away. They're taking bets on us, you know, Daniel told me one evening as we reviewed fabric samples for the new chairs. The kitchen staff thinks we'll be engaged within 6 months. I laughed, but the thought sent a flutter through my stomach. And what do you think? I asked, trying to sound casual. He looked up from the samples, his eyes sincere. I think I've never met anyone like you before. Our relationship blossomed amid the chaos of construction. One morning, I arrived to find a mason jar of wildflowers on my desk. Nothing fancy, just simple blooms Daniel had picked during his dawn hike. They reminded me of you, he explained later, beautiful without trying to be. The restaurant was beginning to reflect our shared vision, elegant but welcoming, refined but comfortable. We'd preserved elements of the old Le Ciel while infusing it with warmth and accessibility. The curved bar where single diners could now feel welcome, the open kitchen where guests could watch the culinary magic happen. One evening, we hosted a wine tasting to select the new list. The sommelier had gone home, leaving us alone with dozens of open bottles and the task of finalizing our selections. This one, Daniel insisted, holding up a glass of Burgundy. It's perfect with the duck. It's also 3 times the price of the alternative, I countered. Is it really 3 times better? He guided the glass to my lips. close your eyes and really taste it. I did as instructed, letting the wine linger on my tongue. It was extraordinary, complex, nuanced, with a finish that seemed to evolve with each passing second. When I opened my eyes, Daniel was watching me with such intensity that I felt my cheeks flush. "Now you understand," he said softly. "It tells a story," I admitted. "Exactly." He moved closer. "Some experiences are worth the price." In the dim light of the wine cellar, surrounded by bottles holding liquid stories from around the world, he kissed me again. Not the tentative kiss of our first date, but something deeper, a promise of more to come. We started spending weekends together, escaping the pressures of the restaurant. Daniel suggested a trip to a vineyard in Sonoma, where a friend of his was the winemaker. "We need to select a house wine," he reasoned. "It's work-related." We both knew it was an excuse, but I played along. For 2 days, we wandered through sun-dappled vineyards, tasting wines and learning about the winemaking process. In the evening, we sat on the porch of our rented cottage, watching the sunset paint the sky in the same colors as the rosé in our glasses. "I never thought I'd find someone who challenges me the way you do," Daniel said, his arm around my shoulders. "You make me better." "We make each other better," I corrected, leaning into his embrace. That night, wrapped in his arms, I realized how completely my life had transformed. 3 months ago, I'd been a workaholic with a successful company, but an empty personal life. Now I had purpose beyond profit margins, passion beyond professional success. And I had him, this brilliant, frustrating, tender man who saw me for exactly who I was, even when I was wearing old jeans and sneakers. After 3 months of renovation, countless arguments over lighting fixtures and menu fonts, and one particularly dramatic debate about whether tableside service was theatrical or pretentious, our vision for the new Le Ciel was finally ready to be unveiled. "I think I'm going to throw up," I confessed to Daniel as we stood in the kitchen 2 hours before the grand reopening. Staff bustled around us in their new uniforms, elegant but comfortable, just like everything else we'd designed. Daniel squeezed my hand. "Everything is perfect. You're perfect. What if we've ruined it? What if the critics hate it? What if—" He silenced me with a quick kiss. "Then we'll adapt. Together." The guest list for reopening night included food critics, local celebrities, loyal customers from the old Le Ciel, and my personal addition, 20 guests from the community outreach program Thomas now ran. People who had never set foot in a five-star restaurant would dine alongside the city's elite. At precisely 7 o'clock, Elena opened the doors. I stood in the center of the dining room, heart pounding as the first guests entered. Their expressions as they took in the transformation were everything I'd hoped for: surprise, delight, and most importantly, comfort. The new Le Ciel maintained its elegance but had shed its stuffiness. Warm lighting highlighted the natural wood tables. The custom open kitchen let diners glimpse the culinary artistry. The acoustics, which Daniel and I had argued about for weeks, created an energetic buzz while still allowing for intimate conversation. I circulated among the tables, greeting guests and gauging reactions. The food was the true star, Daniel's genius now accessible to a wider audience through our tiered menu approach. I watched a college couple celebrating an anniversary splurge on the tasting menu, while a family of 4 enjoyed the more affordable prix-fixe option. Midway through the evening, I spotted a familiar face at the entrance. Thomas, pausing as if unsure of his welcome. Since his reassignment, he'd thrown himself into the community program with surprising dedication. Today, he was here as a guest, not an employee. I crossed the room to greet him. "Thomas, I'm glad you could make it." He looked different, humbler, but somehow more confident. "The place looks amazing," he said sincerely. Nothing like I expected, but better. Thank you. I gestured to the busy dining room. We wanted to create something special. You have, he hesitated. I owe you an apology. A real one, not just because you're my boss. What I did that night, how I treated you, it wasn't right. Working at the shelter has shown me how often we judge people based on appearances and how wrong we usually are. His sincerity caught me off guard. Thank you for saying that. The community program you created, it's making a real difference. I'd like to continue working with it, if that's possible, even after my reassignment ends. Before I could respond, Daniel appeared at my side, his hand finding the small of my back. Everything okay here? Thomas smiled, noticing the gesture. More than okay. You two have created something remarkable. He glanced around at the diverse crowd. I'm starting to understand what you meant about food bringing people together. As Thomas moved on to his table, Daniel led me to a quiet corner. You did it, he said proudly. Look around. Everyone belongs here now. I leaned into him, watching as a food critic chatted animatedly with one of our community guests, both equally enchanted by Daniel's signature dessert. We did it, I corrected. I couldn't have done this without you. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of congratulations and champagne toasts. Reviews started appearing on social media before the night was over, overwhelmingly positive, praising both the food and the atmosphere. By midnight, the last guests had departed, and the staff gathered for a celebratory drink. Elena raised her glass. To Sarah and Daniel, for showing us that excellence and accessibility aren't mutually exclusive. As applause filled the room, Daniel pulled me close and whispered, Not bad for a woman in sneakers and a chef with an attitude problem. I laughed, remembering how far we'd come. What had begun as an act of revenge had transformed into something far more meaningful. A restaurant where everyone was welcome, a team that felt like family, and a love I never saw coming. 3 weeks after our triumphant reopening, the city's most notorious food critic published his review. I was in my office when Elena rushed in, tablet in hand, her expression grave. Anton Delacroix's review is out, she said, placing the tablet in front of me. My stomach dropped as I read the headline. Le Ciel falls to earth when innovation goes too far. Daniel appeared in the doorway, his face tight with anger. Have you seen it? I nodded, continuing to read as Delacroix systematically dissected our concept. He praised Daniel's technical skills, but lamented the dumbing down of the menu. He called our atmosphere confused and our price structure pandering. His final verdict, in trying to please everyone, Le Ciel has lost its identity. He's a dinosaur, Daniel fumed, pacing the small office. He thinks restaurants should be exclusive clubs for people like him. But as much as I wanted to dismiss the review, some of his points struck uncomfortably close to home. Had we gone too far? Was our vision actually working, or had we created a confusing hybrid that satisfied no one? That evening, our reservation numbers dipped for the first time since reopening. I sat alone in the dining room after closing, nursing a glass of wine and staring at the empty tables. Don't let him get in your head, Daniel said, sliding into the chair across from me. One bad review doesn't define us. What if he's right? The question had been gnawing at me all day. What if we're trying to be everything to everyone and failing at all of it? Daniel reached for my hand, but I pulled away. Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe I should have stayed in tech, where I actually knew what I was doing. His expression hardened. So that's it? One setback and you're ready to give up? I'm being realistic. I'm not a restaurateur, Daniel. I'm an algorithm designer who got lucky with an exit and decided to play restaurant. Is that all this is to you? Playing? His voice was quiet but intense. Because I've put everything into this place, into us. That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? He stood abruptly. Maybe Delacroix is right about one thing. We're trying to be two different restaurants. And maybe we're trying to be two different people to each other. He walked out, leaving me alone with my doubts. That night was our first apart since we'd gotten together, and I barely slept, replaying our argument and the review in my head. The next morning, I arrived early to find Daniel already in the kitchen, aggressively chopping vegetables. I thought we should talk, I said cautiously. He set down his knife. I overreacted. I'm sorry. No, you were right to be upset. This isn't a game to me, Daniel. It's just, I'm not used to failing publicly. He smiled slightly. Welcome to the restaurant business. Our successes and failures happen in real time, in front of an audience. I took a deep breath. I've been thinking about Delacroix's review. Some of his criticisms are valid. Our lunch and dinner experiences are too disconnected. The wine list is trying to serve too many price points. Daniel nodded. The kitchen timing is off on busy nights because we're trying to execute two different menus simultaneously. We spent the next hour dissecting the review, separating legitimate concerns from elitist snobbery. By the time the staff arrived, we had a plan. We're making some adjustments, I announced at the pre-service meeting. Not because one critic didn't like us, but because we can be better. Over the next week, we refined our concept. The lunch menu would fully embrace accessibility, while dinner would return to a more elevated experience, but with our signature hospitality approach intact. We streamlined operations and clarified our identity. One evening, as we worked side by side testing the revised menu, Daniel suddenly put down his spoon and pulled me into a tight hug. What's that for? I asked, surprised by the sudden display of affection. For not giving up, for being willing to adapt without abandoning our values. I melted into his embrace, realizing how close I'd come to walking away from everything that mattered. I'm sorry about what I said. This place, what we've built together, it means everything to me. He pulled back just enough to look into my eyes. You mean everything to me. That night, as we closed up together, I realized that our greatest strength wasn't in being perfect, but in how we handled imperfection, together, with honesty and a willingness to grow. 6 months after our reopening, Le Ciel had found its rhythm. The adjustments we made following Delacroix's review had strengthened our concept, and even he had grudgingly acknowledged our improvements in a follow-up visit. Our reservation book was filled weeks in advance, and we'd been featured in several national publications as a model of accessible luxury. We need to celebrate, Daniel said one night as we locked up. And I don't mean just a nice dinner. We need to get away. I laughed. You want to leave the restaurant? Who are you, and what have you done with my workaholic chef? I'm serious. He took my hands in his. We've been going nonstop for months. Elena can handle things for a week. Let's go to Italy. My first instinct was to say no. I hadn't taken a real vacation in years, even before buying Le Ciel, but the thought of exploring Italian markets and vineyards with Daniel was irresistible. Okay, I agreed, but only if we can call it a research trip. I'll feel less guilty that way. 2 weeks later, we landed in Rome and drove to a small villa in Tuscany that Daniel had rented. It was everything I'd imagined. Stone walls draped in flowering vines, a kitchen with worn wooden counters, and a view of rolling hills lined with cypress trees. This is perfect, I breathed, taking in the sunset from our terrace. Daniel wrapped his arms around me from behind. You're perfect. That week was magical. We slept late for the first time in months, then spent our days exploring local markets, tasting olive oils and wines, and learning cooking techniques from village nonnas who embraced Daniel like a long-lost son. One morning, we visited a small family vineyard perched on a hillside. The owner, an elderly man named Paolo, took an immediate liking to us, especially after learning Daniel was a chef. You must try the wine we don't sell to tourists, he insisted, leading us deep into his cellar. The bottle he opened was extraordinary, complex and elegant, with a story in every sip. This is what wine should be, Daniel said reverently, made with love, not for critics or scores. Paolo nodded approvingly. You understand, wine, food, they are not about showing off. They are about bringing joy. That philosophy defined our vacation. We cooked simple meals with perfect ingredients. We swam in a local lake, laughing like children. We walked through ancient streets, holding hands and making plans. On our final evening, Daniel suggested a hike to watch the sunset from Paolo's vineyard. The climb was steep, but the view from the top was worth every step. Golden light washing over the landscape, turning the vines to bronze and the distant hills to purple. I want to remember this moment forever, I said, leaning against him. Daniel kissed the top of my head. Sarah, look at me for a second. When I turned, he was down on one knee, holding a small wooden box. Inside was a ring, not a flashy diamond, but a simple gold band inlaid with a single small emerald, the exact color of the vineyard in spring. I had this whole speech planned, he said, his voice uncharacteristically nervous, about how you walked into my kitchen and challenged everything I thought I knew. How you made me a better chef and a better man. How I can't imagine cooking another meal without you to share it with. Tears filled my eyes as he continued. But standing here, all I can think is how much I love you. Not for what you've accomplished or what you own, but for your heart, your courage, the way you fight for what you believe in. He took a shaky breath. Sarah Bennett, will you marry me? The setting sun painted everything in shades of gold as I dropped to my knees in front of him. Yes, I whispered against his lips. 1,000 times, yes. We stayed there as twilight faded to darkness, talking about our future, not just the restaurant, but a life together. A family, perhaps. More restaurants with our shared vision. A cookbook that would bring our philosophy to home kitchens. I never expected any of this, I confessed as we walked hand in hand back to our villa. When I bought Le Ciel, it was about proving something. I never imagined finding you. Daniel squeezed my hand. Sometimes the best things in life are the ones we never saw coming. Under a canopy of stars, with the scent of rosemary and lavender in the air, I knew he was right. My greatest revenge hadn't been buying the restaurant or proving Thomas wrong. It had been opening my heart to possibilities I never would have considered before that night of rejection. 1 year to the day after I was turned away from Le Ciel, I stood in the same spot by the host stand, wearing jeans and a casual sweater much like I had that night. The difference? Now I wore Daniel's ring on my finger, and the restaurant around me was a testament to our shared vision. Anniversary jitters? Elena asked, noticing me lost in thought. I smiled. Just reflecting. So much has changed in a year. We'd mark the occasion with a special event, Come As You Are Night, where guests were encouraged to dress however they felt comfortable. Our usual clientele mingled with first-time fine diners, all enjoying Daniel's exquisite food in an atmosphere of genuine hospitality. The kitchen doors swung open and Daniel emerged, his chef's coat spotted with sauce after a busy service. His eyes found mine immediately, his face lighting up with that smile that still made my heart skip. How's it going out here? He asked, slipping an arm around my waist. Perfect, I replied, just like you said it would be. Our first year had been a roller coaster. After returning from Italy, we'd expanded our community outreach program, partnered with a culinary school to offer scholarships, and even launched a small line of specialty products that carried the Le Ciel name. The restaurant had become profitable beyond our projections, and more importantly, it had become a place that mattered to people. Mrs. Chen is asking for you, Daniel said. She wants to thank you for accommodating her grandson's birthday dinner. Mrs. Chen was exactly the type of person who, sometimes the greatest journeys begin with rejection. Remember, success isn't just about proving others wrong. It's about creating something beautiful from the experience. Drop a comment sharing a time when someone underestimated you. And if you enjoyed this story of revenge, romance, and redemption, hit that subscribe button for more inspiring true stories every week.